Hello, friends. Welcome back. I am so happy you're here. Today, we are talking about all of my favorite books of 2025. With the dawning of a new year, that means we have to close out the previous year, which means we get to talk about all of the phenomenal books that I read last year. It was so challenging narrowing down this list. I created it and recreated it multiple times, but I think I'm satisfied with the list that I've constructed. Not that it necessarily matters, but I read 120 books this year. That is subjectively the most successful reading year I've had to date. I've never broken 100 books before. Granted, I read a lot of shorties and some graphic novels, but I just could not believe that I got to 120 books last year. And I am so happy that so many of those are books that I absolutely adored, new all-time favorites, and some definite new 5 stars. Speaking of, let's talk about my honorable mentions first. Every single book on this honorable mentions list, I have 5, were in the running at one point or another in some form of the list. But when all was said and done, they just got inched out. But I still wanted to talk about them. First, we have The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. This is a fairy tale-esque story about 2 boys that went missing when they were children. No one knew where they went for this entire summer or how they survived in the West Virginia wilderness, but one of our main characters, Jeremy, knew. He was the only one with any memory of this magical place that him and his friend Raph had found. And because he couldn't share this with his best friend, they ended up growing apart. But they find their way back to each other when another child goes missing in the same woods that they went missing in as children. This was such a wholesome, cozy, cute story. I loved the romance. I loved the found family. I even loved the heartbreak. This was loosely based on the Chronicles of Narnia, and you can absolutely tell, especially with like the whimsy, but also the undertones of the more traumatic, darker themes throughout. I absolutely loved these 2 men. These characters were phenomenal. I loved this fantastical world that they found themselves in. I loved the sacrifices that were made. This had so much heart, and it really like gripped onto mine. So good. Next, we have Mary by Nat Cassidy. This was such a unique horror. This is following an older woman who is going through something. She goes to the doctor and she is told that she is premenopausal, but she knows that it's something more than that going on. When she goes back to her hometown to take care of her sick aunt, things escalate and worsen. This was such a beautifully told story about womanhood and about how society views women and how they really are expected to be seen and not heard, that they are to be good little angels and listen to what they are being told. And how once you reach a certain age, you're really not viewed as like respectable or trustworthy anymore. And our girl Mary just got to the point where she was over it, and I loved to see it. Not only were there just so many heartbreaking themes throughout this, told by a man, no less. Like, it was so impressively done, but the horror was also so impressive, so well done. It was suspenseful, it was disgusting at points, and there was a scene in this book that even like made me jump, which a book has never done before. The writing really had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. And even though the pace was a little slow throughout some of the parts, the overarching tension in this, the slow, like creeping dread that climbed throughout this entire story was just masterfully done. This is a good for her revenge story that I highly recommend if you liked a little slower paced horror with an unreliable narrator who is questioning her sanity with really like topical, poignant writing, but keeps you like on the edge of your seat and tense the entire time. Next, we have Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver. This is actually the 2nd book in the Ruinous Love trilogy. This is a series of dark, comedic, romantic standalones, each following a different brother from this very messed up family. I read Butcher and Blackbird last year and absolutely adored it. So I picked up Leather and Lark and the 3rd book, Scythe and Sparrow, earlier this year as well. Scythe and Sparrow was just okay, but Leather and Lark was definitely my favorite of the 2. This is a romance between a singer-songwriter, but also vigilante serial killer, and a practically mob bro contract killer who also is a leather worker. That's cool. And these two did not start out on the best of terms, but they end up agreeing to an arranged marriage of convenience. Both of these characters were so traumatized by their past, and seeing their walls come down over time and seeing them go from absolutely disdaining each other to being infatuated with each other was such a hilarious and just heartfelt journey. I loved every second of this. Like, their banter and their chemistry was so good. I have to mention that Lark is a songwriter, and she wrote this song for Lachlan that was actually like produced and released, and I find myself listening to that song like so frequently. Like, I go back to it, and every time I go back to it, I just get those fuzzy feelings that I got when I read this book. Even through all of the, murder, bloodshed, torture, and questionable choices that these characters made, I had such a good time. Next, I have to tell you about the Shepherd King duology. One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns were absolutely phenomenal. They both weren't 5 stars, which is why they didn't quite make it into the top 10, but I loved this fantasy romance duology so much this year. The writing was gothic. It was so atmospheric, it was romantic, and just so beautifully written. The magic system was also unlike anything I've ever read before. It was so unique. It centered around these tarot cards that each had different magical properties. And in this world, this kingdom is shrouded in this mist. And there is this sickness that is plaguing the land, but with this sickness comes magic. But magic is outlawed in this kingdom, other than the magic of the tarot cards. If you are found with magic, you are most likely going to be executed or sent out into the mist, which may be worse. We follow a young woman with this nightmare in her head, a girl who has this sickness but has no visible signs of it that anyone can tell, so she has remained very much under the radar for years. And we follow her and her new comrades on this journey of trying to free the kingdom from this mist and saving these people from this king's tyrannical rule. This world was really unlike anything I've ever read before. It was so fresh and so unique and described so beautifully. I absolutely loved the characters, especially the nightmare in the girl's head. It was definitely giving like Venom, and it honestly just like had me kicking my feet. I was having so much fun. The entire like overarching plot throughout both of these books had me glued to these pages and was just so well done. Loved this duology. The last honorable mention that I have for you is a nonfiction. It is The Courage to be Disliked. If you, like me, constantly wrestle with and struggle with the idea of how people see you, how you're being perceived, and if people like you, I highly recommend this book. Not only is it brutally honest about this author's psychological views, but it is also told in such an engaging and interesting way. This book really changed my mindset. Although, I do still struggle with how I am perceived. It has definitely given me some tools to lean back on to try to stop that when it does arise. And for that, I had to put it on this list. Okay, let's get into the top 10. I am so excited. These are technically going to be ranked, but so many of these could have been interchangeable. Like, the rankings are, take them with a grain of salt. Like, these are all just phenomenal books. But at number 10, we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a fictional memoir-style novel about a rock band in the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six. We get to see where each member came from, how they were brought together, and each one of their stories throughout the years of being in this band together. This is told in purely interview statements from the band members and people that were connected to the band. And despite only featuring dialogue, Taylor Jenkins Reid really brings these characters and this world to life. And even with getting so many perspectives and voices, each one is so distinct and fleshed out, she really makes you care for these characters, and you just want them to do well. You want nothing more for them to succeed and be happy. Getting perspectives from being in a rock band in the 70s, of course, you're going to get the very highs of the life. You're going to get, the sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, but you also get the really lows of addiction, loneliness, of struggling with your self-worth, of just wanting to be seen and loved and accepted, and of living up to others' expectations. Taylor Jenkins Reid always does characters so well. Her characters are always so complex and authentic. They are so flawed and they have so many shortcomings, but you absolutely cannot help but root for them. The characters and the relationships are really where this book shines, even as tumultuous as so many of them were. It is definitely a character-driven story, and I loved every single one of them. I also adored the feminist themes in this book. Like, every single woman in this book was so strong, and they knew exactly what they wanted and what they didn't want, and they were not going to let anybody stand in their way. This was just so masterfully written. It had so much heart, so much grit. I absolutely understand all of the hype that this gets because it deserves it. At the number 9 place, we have In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. In this, we follow what is believed to be the last human on Earth, Victor Lawson. He was created by this inventor android called Geo. They live in the woods with these 2 robots that Victor has scavenged from the junkyards and repaired. We have Nurse Ratchet, who is a medical droid with some signs of sociopathy. We also have a little anxious little cleaning robot named Rambo. One day, when Victor, Nurse Ratchet, and Rambo are at the junkyard scavenging, they find a barely working android and they decide to bring it back to their little tree house to try to repair it. But things go a little awry when he actually wakes up, and it turns out Hap was created to destroy humans, but the sweet bean doesn't want to hurt anybody. He doesn't really understand his feelings at first, but he is so protective of Victor, and it just had me like kicking my feet and giggling the entire time. Vic and Hap's tension was also like so delicious, and when Geo is taken by the organization that created Hap to annihilate all of the humans on Earth, these 4, 1 human, 3 robots, go on a mission to rescue Geo. There are a few scenes in this book where Hap was giving major Winter Soldier vibes with what he kind of had to go through with like fighting his programming. And if you know anything about me, I am a Bucky stan. So that definitely did not hurt with my adoration of this book. It really just like made me feel for this character and adore him that much more. This whole thing was just so cute and fun and wholesome, but it also had those more serious topics of like what it means to be human and what happiness really is, because even though these were machines, like they experienced their own little versions of like joy and happiness and love. And Victor and Hap were just so freaking adorable. I cannot get over it. And TJ Klune's writing is just always up my alley. Like, it always hits. It is whimsical, it is funny, but it is always so heartfelt with these like themes of humanity and life and love. And I actually was not aware going into this that it was a Pinocchio retelling. So that's a cool little fact. I absolutely adored this book. Okay, so don't judge me. I make the rules here. So number 8 is going to consist of a series. Yes, 3 books, because I could not choose just one. So for spot 8, we are going with the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez. This is a series of standalone romances that all take place in the same universe. And my God, the way that the 3rd book like tied back into the 1st book was like a masterclass in writing. Abby Jimenez is really like out here doing the Lord's work. She knows what the girls want and she gives it to us. She gives us tension. She gives us drama. She gives us real life struggles, but she also gives us the humor that is not cringeworthy, like laughing out loud at all of these books. And each one is just filled with so much heart, and the freaking chemistry, the romances in these books are freaking next level. I love a love story where the 2 characters want to be together so bad, but there are just these extenuating circumstances that keep getting in the way. And each of these books really explored a different version of that so beautifully. So for the first one, Part of Your World, this is a small town guy that meets a city girl, and it really just explores them trying to make it work in these two very vastly different worlds. Yours truly follows a woman who is a nurse, and she is going through a divorce, but she's also up for a promotion. But this new doctor comes in and she thinks that he's going to get the promotion instead of her. Her brother is also really sick. He is going through chemo, and they start writing these letters to each other. And oh my gosh, this was so freaking beautiful. And lastly, Just for the Summer, this follows two people who are supposedly cursed. So both of these people are very unlucky in love, but they are seemingly good luck charms for whoever they are splitting with, because every time that they break up with someone or get broken up with, I think, that person finds their happily ever after. So their game plan is to meet up and be each other's good luck charms. So when they eventually break up, they can find their happily ever after. But turns out they kind of already find their happily ever after together. But our girl has a super toxic mother, and our guy is like taking guardianship over his 3 younger siblings. So it's kind of a mess, but God, all 3 of these were just so phenomenally done. If I had to rank them, I think in 3rd place, even though it ties so beautifully back to the first one, I think my least favorite is Just for the Summer, even though all of these are absolute 5 stars. It would go Just for the Summer, and then in 2nd place, I would probably do Part of Your World, and I think my favorite was Yours Truly. But like I said, all of these were 5 stars. Absolutely recommend. I cannot wait to dive into more of Abby Jimenez's stuff that she is releasing. In the number 7 spot, we are going with Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a really gruesome, hard-hitting horror novel about an Asian woman living in New York during the COVID pandemic. She witnesses her sister get shoved in front of a subway train, calling her Bat Eater, murdering this Asian woman. God, this really showed the real life horror of what people had to go through and how hard it was to be Asian in America during this pandemic. It was absolutely infuriating thinking about real people having to go through these just racist, judgmental struggles. And as if seeing her sister's murder firsthand wasn't enough, she also gets to see countless atrocities because she is actually a crime scene cleaner. And New York City at this time is being plagued with Asian hate crimes. So every crime scene that she is sent to, she is having to wash away the remains of these Asian women. With her job, we definitely get to see some very gruesome and disturbing scenes. Like, so many of the scenes in this book were absolutely disgusting and like made my stomach twist. And throughout the entire book, she feels like her sister is haunting her leading up to this Japanese festival of the dead. And on top of this, just the world being against her because of her race and what is going on in the world. The horror elements were very much steeped in Japanese folklore, which I thought was just so interesting to read about and learn about. This was just so unique, and the body horror and the gore in this were so vivid, so disturbing, but honestly, like, so beautifully described. I loved the writing. I loved the characters, I loved the message, I just loved everything about this. At the number 6 spot, we have the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. Technically another series, but there are volumes of this that you can get that are all 5 novellas bound up into one glorious book. So I consider this not cheating. In this, we follow a woman named Lana who is on a revenge mission against the men and the town that brutalized her, traumatized her, and left her for dead as a teenager. Everyone believes that she died that day, but like the ghost of Christmas past, she is coming back to haunt all of those that did her wrong and turned a blind eye to what happened to her. And by haunt, I mean brutally murder. And just when we thought that her grand scheme was planned out to perfection, she meets Logan. Logan is an FBI agent profiler who is investigating a string of gruesome murders. That's right, folks. She is falling in love with the man who is investigating the murders that she is committing. And this FBI agent is falling in love with the serial killer that he is trying to track down. I absolutely devoured all 5 of these novellas, like one after the other after the other. I could not stop. I could not put them down. I honestly don't know where to start with all of the things that I loved about this series. This was so smartly written. Like, St. Abbey was such a genius. When your main protagonist is a serial killer, there's obviously a lot of like planning and intricate details that go into this grand scheme. And our main character is just so freaking intelligent. She and her like best friend sidekick were freaking masterminds. Not only is this woman a genius, but she is also obviously such a badass. She is putting down these men that are like twice her size all by herself. And I know that sounds a little unrealistic, but I am picturing her as like an absolute Black Widow. She has trained so much for this, and it absolutely shows. But she is also just such a genuinely good person. I absolutely loved the constant internal struggle surrounding her morality. She was obviously a very morally gray character, which your girl loves. But like she just went through so much traumatic shit. My heart ached for her. But man, every time she got to check another name off of that list, like my heart soared. And don't even get me started on this romance, guys. Like the tension and the suspense of Lana having to sneak behind Logan's back to try to commit these murders while also like dating an FBI agent that is actively trying to find you. It was just so good. And she wants revenge so bad, but she also, you know, just wants to spend time with her boyfriend. So it was like this constant struggle of wanting revenge so badly, but, you know, is it worth giving up for this love that she has found? And their chemistry was just phenomenal. This whole series was just filled with twists and turns and so much suspense. I could not put these down. This was like a little bit Dexter, a little bit Criminal Minds, a little bit Prodigal Son, and so much freaking fun, honestly. But I mean, definitely check your trigger warnings because this is like a dark romance. It is following a serial killer, so definitely check your triggers. But I had such a good time with this series. We have reached the top 5, and in the 5th spot, we have Vicious by V.E. Schwab, another duology that I absolutely adored, but I am only putting the first one on this list. I did really enjoy Vengeful, which is the second book, but it did not make it into the top 10. This is an urban fantasy set in a world with superheroes, sort of. This follows the story of once best friends and college roommates, Victor and Eli. Eli decides to do his senior thesis on what this world calls extraordinaries. These are people with like supernatural abilities. It is an urban legend. A lot of people believe that these don't even exist. But Victor and Eli fall down this rabbit hole of research, of near-death experiences, adrenaline, and these rumors of people with unexplained powers. Their hypothesis, under the right circumstances, they believe from what they have found that they can turn someone or make even themselves into these beings with supernatural abilities. But when they move from theoretical to actually experimental, things don't quite go the way that they had planned. And 10 years later, Victor is breaking out of prison on the hunt for his now apparently archenemy Eli, and Eli has been on a murder spree of anybody with supernatural abilities other than his girlfriend, who helps him in this mission to rid the world of extraordinaries. And with this back and forth narration, jumping between the past and the present, we get to see like how these best friends turned into these enemies. It honestly says a lot about how well this was written. I am usually not a huge fan of the like time hopping timelines, but this was told in such a way that I was so equally invested in both timelines. And the magic in this book, I mean, more so kind of like science, but like the powers in this were so unique and so interesting to learn about. The way that a person's abilities were like granted was just so imaginative, in my opinion. It was so cool. And it honestly like made a lot of sense. It felt like something that, you know, crazily could actually happen in real life. And my God, the characters, every character had so much depth and felt so real. I absolutely like adored Victor. He is not a good person, admittedly. Like he will admit that, but he has such a big heart. And God, Eli made such a good villain. Like their entire friends to enemies story arc was so artfully crafted. It was so well done. Like, even these side characters were so fleshed out, and like V.E. Schwab really made me grow so attached to every single member of this little found family that Victor had put together. I really need to read more of V.E. Schwab stuff because every single thing that I have read from her has been an absolute delight. Even Vengeful, which, like I said, wasn't quite as good as Vicious in my opinion, but it was still fantastic. This honestly just, like, I don't know, it felt like a superhero movie, and I was so here for it. I loved it. In the number 4 spot, we have Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. I freaking adored this book. This is a dark comedy romance between a trauma nurse named Allie and a cyber hacker named Josh. Our girl Allie unwinds from her very stressful, exhausting days at the hospital by coming home and doing what I'm sure a lot of us are guilty of doing. We scroll through our phones, we scroll through TikTok, and she has been very into a certain niche on TikTok lately. It is the masked man thirst traps. And she has been very drawn to one user in particular, that is the Faceless Man. And Josh spends his spare time, you guessed it, as the Faceless Man. Josh has been a little obsessed with Allie ever since she wandered into his kitchen when she was on a booty call with his roommate one night. So they've met before, but Allie has no idea that Josh is the Faceless Man. No one does, actually, not even his best friend and roommate Trevor. Which is why when Trevor shows Josh a message from Allie asking him to put on a mask and to come over with a picture of Josh's TikTok account, Josh is floored. But now that he knows that Allie has a thing for his alter ego, like, his obsession just ramps up. He cannot stop thinking about taking her up on all of the salacious comments that she has left on all of his videos. And thus begins his admittedly very intense but really sweet mission to win Allie over. He really goes like full stalker. He turns watching this woman into an Olympic sport. Their flirting, like, through these cameras and through their texting, is just so funny and so unmatched. I loved that they were both so lusty for each other, but they were also just like having fun with each other. They were like bickering and so snarky, and they just fit so well together. One of the many reasons that I loved this so much was that our guy Josh is an absolute sweetheart, cinnamon roll, golden retriever man. I honestly just cannot get over how not only like dark and hot and steamy this was, but it was also like so sweet and heartfelt and just like adorable. Both of these characters were just so loving and caring, but also just so funny. I read this entire book with just the stupidest grin on my face. I read this in 2 nights. Like, I was so engrossed, I forgot I was reading for a majority of this book. The audiobook, I'm sure, had a lot to do with that. This is a duet narration style, so anytime that the male was talking, no matter which chapter perspective you were in, the male narrator spoke, and vice versa. Anytime that the woman had dialogue, it was the woman that was speaking. And God, just both narrators were so damn good at their job. This truly gave me like everything I look for in a romance. We had complex characters with internal struggles. We had the tragic backstory. We had chemistry through the roof. We had sexy banter. We had an opportunity for missed communication, but our girl was like, no, I'm gonna hear you out, which I absolutely love. And my feet were just like kicking the entire time. The word that just keeps coming back into my head for this book was, it was so much freaking fun. I loved it so much. At the number 3 spot, we have Slewfoot by Brom. This is a witchy, gothic historical fiction about a woman who is down on her luck, surrounded by bigots, and a morally gray creature who is trying to remember who he is and decide who he wants to be. This was such a beautiful story. It is the year of our Lord, 1666. Abatha lives with her sweet husband, Edward, in this Puritan village. But when Edward sadly passes away, Edward's brother, Wallace, tries to swoop in and take advantage of the situation that Abatha is now in. I loved Abatha's character so much. Like, she had so much sass, so much snark, and she was not gonna let like any man, anybody walk all over her, even through everything that she had to endure. Like, she was so strong-willed. Ah, I want to be her when I grow up. I really loved seeing the character arcs of both Slewfoot and Abatha, both as a pair and like as individuals. Slewfoot's constant internal struggle of deciding and trying to remember like who he was, but more importantly, who he wanted to be was such an interesting dynamic, especially for like the context of what he was. He was being so drawn and so torn in these two vastly different directions, and he couldn't decide, you know, whether he wanted to be like this god or this devil or somewhere in between. And watching Abatha become the woman that these people all feared was just so satisfying. It honestly like hurts my soul to think that things like this really happened in our history to poor women. Like, thinking about the Salem witch trials just eats away at me. But this was so well done. It was so beautiful. I loved these topics and conversations of like good versus evil throughout the entire book. The writing was also just really beautiful. It had this like little air and lilt of Old English without being like too distracting or sounding super historical. The atmosphere was absolutely immaculate. The discussions of like identity and humanity were so beautifully done. And the mystery of like trying to figure out who and what Slewfoot was the entire time was so alluring. Even though the chapters were really long, I absolutely flew through this. It was constantly propelling me forward with its mysterious intrigue and absolute fear for Abatha's well-being. This was such a quintessential autumnal read, and I think the fact that I read it in October just pushed it over to the next level. It set the vibes so well. I just love this book so much. Okay, we are at our top two, and I have gone back and forth so many times. These are pretty much interchangeable. Like, I did choose a top spot, but just know like the difference in these is less than a hair. Like, they really are interchangeable. Both of these books are so phenomenal. They have become a part of me. I want them injected into my bloodstream. I want these buried with me when I die. But I digress. Anyway, in the number 2 spot, we have Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I never thought that a romance between a woman and her sister's fiance would be my cup of tea, but despite that fact, this romance has me in an absolute chokehold. So we open up on Cora attending her sister's birthday party at a bar, I think, and when her wallet is stolen, she has to call for help. She decides to call her sister, who had left the bar earlier, but instead of reaching her sister, she reaches her fiance, Dean. Dean and Cora do not get along. He is an absolute asshole to her. He is always like jabbing jokes at her expense and just seems to be an all-around unlikable guy. After some light teasing, he does agree to come get her, and she thinks, how could this night get any worse? But oh, it definitely does. They both end up kidnapped by a serial killer. They wake up in a basement, chained across from each other, and are forced to endure weeks of torture. And even though they have spent the last 15 years teasing each other, insulting each other, playing stupid practical jokes on each other, they have to work together, put all of that behind them to try to survive and escape. What these two go through in this basement turns their frenemy dynamic into one of heart-wrenching trauma bonding. I honestly don't know what is wrong with me that one of my favorite books of last year involve such like heinous acts. Like, even now, just thinking about the contents of this book is like putting a rock in my gut. Like, it is churning my stomach. Like, the absolute heartbreak and empathy I have towards these characters. This is raw. It is gritty. It is dark. It is so traumatic. And the first part of this book is a little bit hard to get through, but you stick around for the second part. When they finally escape and you follow their journey of healing and trying to overcome this trauma. God, this just has so much heart, so much depth. The relationship that sparks between these two characters is so layered and complex, but my God, you just want both of them to be happy. This is unlike any romance I have ever read before. Like, I've read dark romance in the past, but like having the darkness be this point of contention, the darkness in this is actually dark. It's not like fun, hey, let's go kill some bad people. Like, this is dark. It tore me apart. It gutted me, but it also just like slowly mended my broken heart that it shattered multiple times. It is rare that a book sticks with me like this one has. It feels like I read this days ago, not almost a year ago. I read this in January, and I honestly have a feeling that it is not going anywhere soon. Like, this is going to stick with me. This lives in my head, absolutely rent-free. And if you are thinking of picking it up, please check the trigger warnings, but I am obsessed. Like, this absolutely had me in a complete chokehold. It still does. Like, I think about this book on the daily. I loved it so much. It is time for our number one of 2025. It is Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. This is a young adult horror romance. This is a story of two young boys that attend this private academy in the middle of the woods. We have Andrew, who writes these beautiful, melancholy stories, and we have Thomas, who accompanies them with his beautifully horrific illustrations. These two boys are best friends, inseparable. So when Thomas starts to distance himself from Andrew at the beginning of their senior year, Andrew kind of starts to spiral, and his sweet, anxious brain fears that his twin sister Dove is secretly dating Thomas behind his back. And that's a problem because this boy is so in love with Thomas. It's ridiculous. Andrew doesn't believe that Thomas could ever feel the same about him, but it is so obvious to us, the reader, that he is just as equally enamored with Andrew. These boys are like absolutely obsessed with each other, and it is beautiful. It is tragic. The yearning in this book, oh my gosh, the freaking yearning is next level. So good. And it turns out the reason that Thomas has been distancing himself is because Thomas's illustrations are coming to life in the woods, and Thomas is out there every night fighting these monsters to keep them away from the school and the people that he cares about. Andrew follows him out one night and discovers this, and they both embark on this mission to try to figure out where these monsters are coming from and how to put a stop to them. This was such a gorgeously written, like heart-wrenching story. C.G. Drew's atmosphere is so vivid, so descriptive, but in such a unique way. You can really like see and taste and smell everything in this world. And their writing, again, is just so unique and so poetic. I instantly like fell in love with it. And these characters, like the last one, have not left my brain since I read this. I felt so much for these two boys. Like, I would die for these boys. I would kill for these boys. And even though their obsession was like borderline toxic, I shipped it so hard. Everything about it was just so beautiful and so well done. It was dark. It was melancholic. By the end, it does get a little like fever dreamy, which I absolutely loved. And the horror elements in this were actually pretty intense for a young adult novel. Like, these monsters were so vividly descriptive and like so grotesque. And some of these scenes were like truly horrific. But as disturbing as some of these scenes were, like, it was still so beautifully described with their beautiful prose. I truly just loved everything about this book. It is my number one favorite of 2025. And who would have thought that a young adult would have been my number one favorite of the year? Not this girl. But that really just showcases like how masterfully C.G. Drews is out here writing their stories. Like, I cannot wait to pick up every single thing they write in the future. And that is it, friends. Those are my top 10 books of 2025 with some honorable mentions. I had such a great reading year, and I just hope that 2026 is just as good. Please let me know down in the comments, what was your favorite book of 2025? Give me your top 3, give me your top 10, tell me everything. Or if you want to leave me an emoji to let me know you were here, leave me the book stack or star emoji for our top 10. And while you're down there, don't forget to like the video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future. I hope you are absolutely loving what you are reading lately. Stay safe out there, and I will see you soon for another video. Bye, friends.
If I forgo, then make me. You didn't think I'd be here waiting up all night, all night. I'm here to tell you something. There ain't another love that is gonna hold you down like mine.